Morning, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show with this man, the Beachy Programmatic. How you doing, D?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Good. You want to start with the disclaimer?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, keep in mind, Will and I and Market Chameleon, we're not a registered investment advisor. We're not a broker-dealer. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need advice, call your registered investment advisor. Call your broker. That's what they're there for. There's the disclaimer.
Excellent.
And let me share my screen here. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Will and I, we do these shows in the morning to try to help answer questions you may have about the Market Chameleon tools, the data, analytics. If you have a question, type it into that live chat on YouTube. Will's watching it. He'll read it back to me. And to give you guys a chance to put those questions in, we'll take a couple minutes, look at the pre-market report, see if we could get insights, what's going on in pre-market hours, and then we'll move on to the questions. All right, so pre-market report. These are stocks trading in a pre-market hours. Our first view up here, you'll see it's a calendar view that you can go back in time, click on a date, see what happened in the pre-market on that particular historical date. Today, we're on December 6th. And from a high level, this is what's going on so far. We got 560 stocks trading higher in the pre-market, 206 stocks trading lower. As far as volume, we got 230 million shares trading on up volume versus 59 million on down volume. If we convert that volume to dollar value, we see $2.5 billion worth of stock trading higher versus $375 million worth of stock trading lower. So that kind of indicates to us that so far the activity in the pre-market hours is trading with some bullish sentiment, a bullish lean. Let's look at the pre-market from a couple more perspectives, and then we'll move on to the questions. So let's take a look at these lists here. We got a list of our most active stocks in the pre-market hours, our biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. We see 113 stocks made our biggest percentage gainers list, 41 on our decliners. Now, this list is more filtered. We have certain liquidity, price, volume thresholds in place here. However, we do see that there are stocks in there that are small cap stocks, ETFs, leverage products. So to make this list, as long as if the securities listed on a major U.S. exchange and meets those thresholds, it could make our biggest percentage gainers list, biggest percentage decliners. So far, this looks like, also more of a bullish lean in the pre-market trading. But to filter it down to a small group of stocks, we could use the filters above. If you do have a watch list or several watch lists, you can filter by your watch list using this drop-down menu. I'm going to use this filter here in ETF, for example. When you click on it, you see a menu of different ETFs to select from. We're going to choose SPY. When you click on it, the list below will get filtered by stocks that are holdings in the SPY ETF, which are the S&P 500 constituents. And here we see 11 stocks made our percentage gainers list, 4 on our biggest percentage decliners list. So that also points to or indicates that the trading in the pre-market hours, has some bullish lean, bullish sentiment. And I think, Will, we gave it a couple minutes. If you have a question now, I'll take them.
No questions have popped up, and I don't see Jackie in yet. He did have a question yesterday relating to something on a feature in Market Chameleon. He said, if you look at an individual stock,
Yep.
I guess choose any stock under tool and then seasonality. What is the difference between simple average return last 10 years and absolute average return last 10 years? That was from Jackie Chen.
Okay.
Yes.
So Ninja, so I went to Tesla, just picked the, top individual stock. And I think he was saying under tools, seasonality. Is that correct? Well,
Correct.
and then I think the question was what's the difference between the simple average and absolute average, right?
Correct.
Okay. So simple average, absolute. Okay. Um so under here we're under seasonality if you guys are looking at it for the first time, and this shows us a report of the seasonal performance by calendar month. Okay, so this is looking at, how did, in this situation, Tesla perform on a particular calendar month, and then we go back in time and compare those. If we see any kind of seasonality trend or pattern. So you could see here, these are the months of January, right? So going back in years, 2023, 2022, 2021, and this is the performance for that particular calendar month. And it's going back 10 years. So we could see that's going, month by month. And then below that, right, now that we have these, we look at the stats, right, or summary stats. And usually what are your stats? Your averages, your max, your min, your median. So let's just kind of go over that, and we'll cover the simple returns and the absolute. So here, right, our first stats is just taking simple returns, which basically is looking at all the returns. It doesn't matter if they're negative for January or positive. We're looking at all of them, and we're saying, what is the average, right? So if you take the average of a positive and a negative, right, you add it up, divide it by the number of observations, and that's your average. So you could have, if you have a -5 and a +5, you add them up, divided by 2, it's still 0, because you're adding a positive and a negative, right? So the idea there is if there's a positive or negative, we see there's a skew towards either up or down, right? So here we see on average it's 11.2%. So on average it was positive, right? More skewed towards the upside. So then we could take a look at the frequencies of how often was it up versus how often was it down, right? So then we look at the number of positive moves, right? And that happened 63.6%. And the number of negative moves, that was 36% of the observations. So then it tells us more often, the month of January was up, more of the observations were positive, less of them were negative. So there it looks like a historical positive skew, right? On average, and the number or frequency of events. So that's looking at the simple returns. But if we're looking at the movements, right? If we just want to know, well, how much does it move in the month of January, up or down? Because sometimes it could be up, sometimes it could be down. But what is the magnitude of the moves? Because not every stock, has the same volatility or moves at the same, magnitude. You could have some stocks that move very little, some stocks that can move a lot. Like in Tesla, you could see it has big movements. So if we just took the average, we're not going to get a sense of the magnitude of the moves, right? Because if you have a positive and a negative move, those will average out to a smaller moves. Like I give you an example. If you take you could take a negative 20% move, and a positive 20% move. But if you add them together, that adds up to 0, right? Negative 20 and a positive 20 add up to 0. So even if you take the average of that, it's 0, right? So what if we wanted to know, though, what is the magnitude of the move? Well, we have to convert them then all to positive numbers and then take the average. So if we wanted to see on average how much can it move up or down, well, if we convert all the values and make sure they're positive, that's absolute values, right? Those are the absolute values. So this negative 11.4 becomes a positive 11.4. This negative 7.7 becomes a positive 7.7, and so forth. This negative 20.3 becomes a positive 20. So then once we have all of these numbers positive, then we could, right, sum them up and take the average. And then we see the magnitude of the move, up or down. Doesn't matter. We just want to know how much, does it move usually in January? And then we could compare it to other months, right? Does January, here's the absolute average, 20%. Does that tend to move more than February or March? Or where do we see the lowest ones? Where the lowest moves compared to where the highest moves. So what the absolute averages wants to look at is irrelevant of the direction. We just want to know the magnitude of the moves. Okay. So here we see it's 20%. Okay. With the largest move, up or down, doesn't matter. Largest was 55. Could have been down, could have been up, but we're trying to get a range here. So 55% here you see there. And the lowest was 7.7%, which was to the downside. So that's the range of the absolute moves. What if we wanted to see the range of just the highest move and lowest? Then we could go here. This is the best to the upside, the worst, to basically the highest and lowest move, right? So to get that range. And the median, what is this median? Well, that's saying if we took all our observations, right? If we took all our observations and kind of, lined them up in order, and we went right to the middle, right? We didn't take the average. We didn't take the, we're not averaging nothing. We're looking at the middle. Where's the middle where half of the observations are below this number, half are above? That's 12.5%, right? So that gives you a reference point of if the average is skewed, how far it's skewed from the middle, right? Because the middle number could be 12.5, but the average could be very skewed very high or very low when you have very big outliers to one side, right? Because a bigger number will move the average, right? So, so we're looking at the stats, when we're analyzing the seasonality, right? When we're looking at these set of observations, we want to look at it from different perspectives, not just one, right? And that's what these stats are doing. These stats are looking at this set of data, the seasonality, and looking at it from a couple different perspectives. One is just, its directional tendencies, right? Skewed up or down, and how frequently is it up versus how frequently is it down. Then it's looking at just the magnitude of the moves. Is it very volatile in this month, tended to be not so volatile? How does that compare to other calendar months, right? And then we'll get the full range and the median down here. So this kind of gives you a summary of that particular calendar month from those three different perspectives. All right, so simple average, just like you just take the straight numbers, average them out. Absolute average, down here, we convert all the negative numbers to positive numbers. The positives remain the same, and then we run the analysis that way. So hopefully, I don't know if he joined in, and hope I think that was the question, Will.
Yeah, that was the question. I'm assuming
Difference.
D. That was very helpful. Jackie's not in, but next time I see him, I'll definitely point to this for him. No other
Okay.
questions have popped up as of yet.
Okay, so just really quick, I'm going to point out to a new feature, because as we're going to be rolling out some new features in the next week and the following week, and that we're working on. So in preparation for it, all right, we kind of did we published, I believe we published yesterday, a new feature, uh from a top level that you guys could see, and then the 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 features that we're going to be publishing will be more detailed. So here, some of you guys use this option volume report. I'm going to come over here. So this option volume report, you guys probably see you have the ability to look at it by number of contracts, volume, or notional value, right? So you could see here Tesla traded $2.4 billion worth of options yesterday. This is the average daily, so it's a little bit more, and then it has a breakdown calls and puts. So what we added here to the end were three of the ways that these options usually trade. And one is just a straight call or put, buy or sell, right? So it's not attached to anything. It's just like, buying calls, selling calls, buying puts, selling puts. So this is like a single leg trade, right? It's not tied to anything. It's not like, any particular strategy. So that's a single leg trade. So in Tesla, 86% of yesterday's trades were, that fit that category of single leg straight buying or selling, call or put. But some of the trades are multi-leg, like a bull call spread, or vertical or calendar or diagonal. These are multi-leg trades. It could be a butterfly. So these trades are not a straight, buyer and selling of an option. It's more strategic, more constructed, more designed for something. Okay. And those are multi-leg trades. And we could see that in Tesla yesterday, that represented 14% of the total volume in all the trades, all the options. And then we have contingent trades. So contingent trade is usually tied to something else, or usually stock, right? Like a buy right. If you do a buy right, you sell it, and so if you entered into your broker as a buy right where you want to get executed with the call and the stock, it'll be more contingent, but it doesn't have to be a buy right. It could be, a delta neutral trade. It could be, and something that's tied to something else, which is usually a stock that's more than just options, or the options in the stock. So sometimes we'll see that 1%, 4%. You could see that. So this is the reason I'm kind of showing you this now, and why we're getting the breakdown is that the new features will start actually parsing this data for us and getting insights on what's going on, like what's going on with these multi-leg, what's going on here, like trying to get more deeper insight by aggregating trades, pointing things out. And I think the first one when we're gonna release, it's gonna be right before our next webinar with interactive brokers. So that's next Tuesday. We'll talk about more like these breakdowns, because when you're trading, you're trading a particular stock or whatever, you want to know or try to understand what's going on in there. What are the type of traders in there? What are they doing? What are their tendencies? What kind of liquidity is there? This helps with price discovery. Where are things transacting at? What type of positioning are they? How are they positioning themselves in different situations? And this helps you anticipate potential order flow. So what we want to do is not just look at something from a top level, right, where we usually look at, okay, there's an unusual amount of volume here, right? So here we see an unusual amount of volume in BlackRock. Well, now I see the breakdown here, that 66 about, so a third of it was multi-leg, right? And a third of it were trades that were done that had some kind of specific strategy in mind. And we want to go and see that. Well, what were they doing? What was happening there? What was happening here? So, just wanted to show you guys this because these three we just added so you could view from a high level. I think this is available right now to everybody. So you could view from a high level just to get used to it, because look here, I'll show you that. Look, 45% of the volume, if we took all the volume yesterday in options, 45% of it was in multi-leg. So basically there are people, a lot of people using strategies. And it's actually probably, even if we look at that 45%, it's probably even more meaningful if we put it into context, because we know that, look, the top 10% of all the volume. I'm sorry, top 10 stocks. So if we just took the top 10 stocks, that's 50% of the volume. Half the volume.
This is a question from me.
Oh, yeah.
That 10% of stocks, is that also ETFs or is that just equities?
Yeah. 10%. I'm not the top 10, not 10% of stocks, just the top 10 busiest. Those are
the 10 busiest products in the market.
10 busiest, right? So these are the top 10. So you could see that in here, the top 10, usually because they have zero DTs, so it's very skewed to single leg, because those zero DTs, a lot of multi-leg strategies, you're not going to apply it there. So when we take the multi-leg trades are a very important now part of options trading, and it's growing, and I think that's a good thing, because that when you're using those types of strategies, you're starting to actually really take advantage of the power of options to mitigate risks, hone in on a specific strategy or target, and enhance your potential returns for each dollar risks. So so here, just to get a kind of view of what's going on from a top level, we added these three columns here for you guys to see, how do we start breaking down. Now that we know maybe this is how much volume this traded, we know how much SPY traded, we know how much Tesla traded, and we could even compare it to the average daily volume. But really the next step is to break it down and understand it, right? To comprehend it, what is underneath the surface, what are people actually doing, right? Like not just straight volume, but what are they doing? What are they potentially thinking? How are they positioned? How is it different from before? That's what the next stage is of, to really understand it in more detailed in a deeper way than just from a top level. So I guess no more, and we're right up next to 9:30. So
Yeah, no, you carried it right to the end. Rob did say something very nice. It's always nice when we get a nice comment. He said, "Excellent information. This site is amazing. Nothing like it anywhere." So thanks for those nice words, Rob.
Yep.
Great job, Deem. I did put the link into the webinar for interactive brokers next Tuesday. The large delta volume trade screener is going to be the webinar, and that link's in there. Remember, any interactive broker webinar you have to pre-register for, and then you're in the interactive broker system. You can watch it at your convenience. They'll notify you once it's been done if you can't make it live. So great job, D.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day, and hope to see you guys tomorrow.
All right, Trade and Peace Communities. Have a great day, D. We'll talk later. Bye.
Bye.